I'm a 27-year-old guy and my fiancée, L, is 26. My dad, B, is 52 and my mom, R, is 50. Like many others, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here we are. I've never really used Reddit before, but I've come across some stories on TikTok, so I figured I'd reach out for some advice. I know you all appreciate a good backstory, so I'll do my best to keep it clear and concise, but bear with me, since it's only been a week and I might get a bit scattered. Elle and I first crossed paths during her freshman year of college when we both lived in the same dorm. It turned out we were from neighboring towns, so I offered her rides home, which only added about 20 minutes to my trip. After a bunch of road trips and hanging out on campus, we started dating. Both of our families are pretty tight-knit, so we introduced each other to our folks right away. I met her family a few times when I dropped her off, but it was just quick hellos. Thankfully, our families welcomed each other and our relationship blossomed. I graduated a year before her and landed a solid job back home. I made it a point to visit her at school, and we always carved out time for each other when she was back. After she graduated, she moved in with me since we both found jobs in the same city. After 3 years of living together, I popped the question, and now we're in full wedding planning mode. Now, let's get to the part you're all curious about. Looking back, I realized there were a ton of signs I missed, thinking my dad was just being friendly with my ex. Like how he would call her all the time, and whenever I was around, they'd just say they were chatting about some family event or whatever. There was this one time when Elle was in the shower, and her phone rang. I saw it was my dad, so I picked it up. He sounded both shocked and a bit annoyed when he realized it was me. I asked what was up and he said he wanted to discuss my mom's birthday with Elle, which was coming up in a week. After a quick chat, we hung up and now I can't help but feel like a fool for not catching on sooner. The day I found out everything was just like any other Thursday. Elle had the day off and made us breakfast. As I was heading to work, she kissed me and wished me a great day. On my drive, I suddenly remembered I had forgotten some important paperwork for a 3 p.m. meeting. I figured I'd just swing by home during lunch to grab it. Elle was texting me throughout the day about the usual couple stuff, what to have for dinner, asking if I wanted her to hang up the laundry, you know, the typical chatter. I didn't think to let her know I was coming home for lunch, so when the time came, I just left work and headed back. When I got home, I spotted a car that resembled my dad's parked in our lot, but I didn't think much of it. I just parked and headed inside. As soon as I opened the door, I was hit with a scene straight out of a movie, like one of those classic moments where someone walks in on their partner cheating. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom, and I could hear some faint moans echoing through the apartment. I froze at the door, completely stunned, my mind was swirling with anger, sadness, and disgust. If you had been a fly on the wall, you would have seen me standing there like a statue, unable to move. After what felt like an eternity, I finally snapped out of it, pulled out my phone to record, and started picking up the clothes scattered on the floor, tossing them into the hallway. Then, I filmed my walk to the bedroom. The door was wide open, and I stood there filming for about a minute before flipping on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden brightness and turned to look at me, and to my absolute shock, it was my dad in bed with her. Once the initial shock wore off, my dad noticed I was recording and started to panic, scrambling for something to cover himself while telling me to stop filming. He managed to grab a towel and started walking toward me, but I warned him to back off if he didn't want to get hurt. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I punched him right in the jaw and his head hit the door before he slumped to the ground. Elle screamed and I pointed the camera at her, saying, "Worried about your F-buddy, but nothing to say to your fiancé." After about a minute, my dad started to come to, and I told them I just needed to grab something for work and would be heading back. I warned them that if either of them was still there when I returned, I'd send the video to everyone they knew. I stopped recording, looked at my dad, who was still recovering, and said, "You're dead to me. You're no longer my father. You should probably go home and talk to mom because I'll be having a chat with her very soon." I hung out in my car for a bit until one of my bosses called to check on me. I told her I was on my way back. When I finally made it to her office to drop off some paperwork, I must have looked pretty rough because she immediately asked if I was okay. I brushed it off, saying I was fine. But then she noticed some blood on my collar, jumped up and said, "You're bleeding." I looked down and explained it was my dad's blood. She seemed puzzled, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. After watching it, she realized that my fiancé was cheating on me not just with anyone, but with my dad. She offered to help, suggesting I take some time off, but I told her I couldn't go back there right now. I just needed a moment and assured her I'd be fine for the meeting since I had another shirt in my office. The meeting went smoothly, I faked a smile like nothing was wrong. Afterward, my boss asked how I managed to pull that off, and I just shrugged and headed to my office. When I got home, it was the first time in ages that I was completely alone. Thanks for letting me vent, it felt good to get it all out. I really don't know what to do next. I need to get out of this apartment. I can't stand being here anymore, and there's no way I'm sleeping in that bed. I know I need to get checked for STDs, and I think I might have hurt my hand too. Update 1. The day after I posted, I tried reaching out to my mom, but none of my calls were going through. I wanted to see if she'd grab lunch with me so I could spill everything. After about 12 attempts, I figured I'd just drive over to her place. She needed to hear what happened ASAP, even if it meant reopening old wounds. While driving, I kept stressing over how to break the news, and it got so overwhelming that I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not exactly a casual chat when you have to tell your mom that her husband is cheating on your fiancé. I drove into the driveway and took a moment in my car to chill out and sort through my thoughts. After a few minutes, my mom flung open the front door, so I got out. She immediately started yelling at me, questioning how I could show up at her place after I hit my dad for trying to break up a fight between Elle and me. She threw every insult at me, calling me an abuser and saying I should leave since Elle isn't ready to forgive me, and if she's smart, she never will. Apparently, my dad had taken Elle to my family's house and told my mom about our argument, saying I hit him when he tried to intervene. She went on for a while until I finally lost it and said, "Really, Mom? Your husband is sleeping with my fiancé, that's why I hit him. If you don't believe me, I can send you a video. But since my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you realize you're just as terrible a mom as my awful dad." Her expression changed, and she looked like I did when I first walked in on them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. She took out her phone, started watching it, and stopped when I turned on the light. She looked up at me, but I just turned and got back in my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced at her, and she was in tears. I felt for her, but too much had been said during that fight for me to go back and forgive her. When I got back home, I started clearing out everything related to Elle and my family from my apartment. I packed up all of Elle's stuff and set it by the front door. Since this has technically been her place, I can't just kick her out, especially since her name isn't on the lease. Plus, she's not the type to handle conflict well, and if she shows up again, it's going to get messy. I also boxed up anything connected to my parents and put it in storage. Like I mentioned before, we were really close, but I have no issue cutting out toxic people from my life. I reached out to Elle's parents to let them know I was calling off the engagement and that she had been cheating on me. I expressed my gratitude for their support during our relationship, which made this whole situation even more painful. I ended the message by asking if they could come pick up her things. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm really hoping they come soon so Elle doesn't have a reason to return. Hey everyone, sorry for the radio silence lately. I wish I could say things are going well, but honestly, that wouldn't be true. I'm feeling all sorts of emotions, swinging from feeling completely numb to just boiling over with anger. Since I found out, I haven't really had a moment of happiness. Besides a few close friends, I don't have much support in real life, especially after my family turned out to be a letdown. A lot has happened since my last update about a month ago, so here's what's been going on. Update 2. After my last post, I decided it was time to tackle everything on my to-do list, like getting tested, finding a therapist, moving, and of course, buying a new bed. I kicked things off by calling my doctor's office to set up testing and get a therapist referral. I had my first therapy session 2 weeks ago, and we agreed to meet weekly. I also got tested last week, but I'll have to wait about a week for the results, so keep your fingers crossed for me. I reached out to a friend who's a real estate agent and he sent me a bunch of listings. I ended up choosing a renovated cabin on the outskirts of town and I just finished moving in 2 days ago. After I wrapped up my move, I reached out to Elle's parents. When they answered, I let them know I had moved out and that Elle still hadn't picked up her stuff. I mentioned that the landlord would start showing the apartment soon, so they needed to grab her things before it all got tossed. That must have motivated them because the next day, my old landlord texted me to thank me for clearing out the place. The only person who knows where I am now is the friend who helped me find this new spot, so I'm pretty sure Elle and my parents won't be stopping by. The downside is that I swapped a 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone has been buzzing non-stop with messages and calls from Elle, my parents, and some friends, but I'm really not in the mood to chat with anyone except my therapist. At work, I've been like a ghost, just going in, getting my tasks done, and leaving. When I do have to interact with someone, I throw on a fake smile and act like everything's fine. My old boss has been checking in on me more often, but I keep it vague and just say I appreciate her concern and that I'll be alright. Honestly, I'm not sure if I will be okay. I know they say time heals, but that feels more applicable when you're dealing with one problem, not when you lose what you thought were your 3 closest people all at once. A big part of me feels like it's gone for good and I don't think it can come back. My therapy sessions are going pretty well, I guess. Since I've never been to therapy before, I don't really have anything to compare it to. We get along fine and she seems genuinely interested in helping me out. In our first session, we mostly just got to know each other and talked about what brought me there. It wasn't super deep, I just shared my story in my own words. By the second session, we dug a little deeper. She asked about my relationship with my parents and I told her it was great up until now. We used to talk a lot and communicate well when issues came up and I had a good upbringing, but that doesn't really matter anymore. When she asked why I cut my mom out of my life, I explained that she said things to me that I wouldn't even say to someone I really disliked and I don't think there's any coming back from that. At the end of our last session, I shared my page with her so she could get a better sense of what I'm feeling and thinking. Typing it out feels way easier than saying it out loud. So, if you're reading this, hey there, doc. Right now, I'm still feeling pretty miserable. I thought I'd be doing better by now, not necessarily happy, but at least okay. I know part of it is my fault for not reaching out to my friends, but the thought of responding to them feels so draining. I know they'll want to hang out or come over to my new place, but I just don't have the energy for that. Until I feel up to it, I'll just keep working, going to my appointments, and chilling on my back deck with some cheap whiskey, trying to enjoy the nice view. I haven't gone hunting since high school, so maybe I'll pick that up again, now that I can hunt from my porch. Moving on to the next tale. Story 2. Am I in the wrong for not inviting my siblings to my wedding? My sister, 34, and her husband, 36, just tied the knot 3 months ago. I, 30, was her maid of honor. I was super pumped to help her with the wedding planning and ended up doing most of the work since I was out of a job at the time and she's a busy doctor. Let's just say she didn't hire a wedding planner, so it was all on me. As the big day approached, I was really unhappy with how she treated me. It felt like I was her personal assistant who could be pushed around just because she was the bride. Just because you're getting married doesn't give you the right to be rude. There were plenty of times I thought about stepping back from the wedding party, but I kept telling myself to hold it together and not rock the boat since she was probably just feeling the pressure. After all I did for her, she decided not to invite my fiancé, even though we've been together for 12 years, but she did invite my siblings' partners who have only been around for 2 to 3 years. My sister and her husband dated for just a year before getting engaged, so we don't really know him that well. She said she didn't want my fiancé there because people would start asking about my wedding, since everyone's been waiting for us to tie the knot for a while. I decided I wasn't going to lift a finger for her wedding until she said sorry and invited my fiancé, which she eventually did. It wasn't the most heartfelt apology, but I let it slide. I felt pretty hurt that she didn't seem to appreciate all the effort I put into making her dream wedding happen, like it was just my duty or something. Fast forward to the wedding day, and everything seemed to go smoothly. The ceremony was lovely, and the couple looked genuinely happy. I was glad for my sister. When we got to the reception, I realized my fiancé and I were stuck at a separate table away from the family. They were at the VIP table, while we were shoved to the back, right next to the kitchen. I thought it had to be a mix-up, so I calmly asked the bride about it, since she was in charge of the seating. She looked straight at me and said there was no mistake, that's where we were meant to be. At the kids' table, no less, surrounded by kids aged 7 to 14. The groom overheard our exchange and seemed to agree with me, but he stayed quiet when my sister shot him a look that said, "Don't you dare speak up." By the end of the night, the groom apologized to my parents for how I was treated and claimed he had no idea his bride had done that. But he didn't say a word to me because she told him not to. So, I decided not to make a fuss and just enjoy the rest of the night with my partner, even though I wasn't going to give a speech. My parents noticed I was missing and were pretty upset about it too. My siblings knew I wasn't at their table, but didn't bother to check on me or ask why I wasn't there. When they found out I wasn't going to speak, my two brothers came over to give me a lecture. They said I needed to understand what my sister was going through as a bride and to be nice to her since it's her big day. They went on about how you only get married once, and I rolled my eyes thinking about how likely that is to last. They called me a disgrace and said I was disappointing for not giving a speech, claiming I was making the night all about me when I was just sitting quietly in the corner. Long story short, I wasn't having a great time, so we decided to leave. We ended up grabbing dinner at McDonald's, and I posted a story of us enjoying burgers, captioning it as our post-wedding meal. I made sure to share it after the reception to avoid looking like I bailed, but my siblings somehow took it as a jab at my sister. To this day, the bride insists she did nothing wrong and that her wedding went exactly as she wanted, so I should have been there. She also didn't like that I looked good in my dress and thought I needed to be punished for bringing my fiancé along. I haven't set a date for my own wedding yet because I wanted to focus entirely on my sister's big day. Plus, she made it clear that I couldn't get married before her since she's older. To avoid any drama, I went along with it, but now I really just want a small gathering with my parents and a few close friends. My parents are on board, but my siblings are calling me childish. Honestly, I just don't want to spend money on people I don't care about. We're having a destination wedding, and my fiancé and I are covering all the costs ourselves. These are our savings, and I don't want to waste it on people who aren't really part of my life. My grandparents and cousins are also saying I'm in the wrong. But if I was left out of my sister's wedding and no one seemed to mind, why should they be upset if I choose to do the same? Relevant comments. Echo Azure Op, aside from the wedding planning drama, one reason for all this could be that your sister really doesn't like your fiancé. But honestly, he hasn't done anything to deserve that treatment. We started dating when we were really young, and both my parents and I care about him a lot. He was my best friend for ages and is still my favorite person. My sister has always been jealous that I had a boyfriend before she did because she thought I wouldn't get married due to my epilepsy. Her husband was her first boyfriend and she rushed into marriage because she wants kids and is already 34. She was so eager to get married before 30 that she started planning and booking vendors even before he proposed. So, to put it simply, she's a bit out there. Her behavior is driven by jealousy and she thinks I shouldn't get to enjoy things unless she has first, just because she's the oldest. This includes stuff like boyfriends, engagements, weddings, and kids. That's why she flipped out when I got engaged before her, she felt it was a total insult. It's not that she dislikes him, she just can't stand that I'm happy. Update time. Hey there. I wanted to answer some questions and give a quick update. I'm 30 and come from a family of 5 kids. I didn't mention this before, but I have 2 sisters, aged 34 and 32, and 2 brothers, 26 and 22. A bit more about my sisters. They're super close and have that ideal sisterly bond. Meanwhile, I'm the middle child with 2 younger brothers. So, why did I agree to have A as my maid of honor? I thought it might help us bond more. I figured this was her way of trying to be a better sister to me. You often hear about those special sister connections during weddings, and I wanted to create that since my sisters have it. I also see that same bond between my brothers. I just wanted a chance to connect with my sisters, and it's more about me feeling left out than being a pushover. Growing up, I was pretty sickly, which meant I spent a lot of time with my parents while my siblings were out having fun, and apparently, that's what they envied. They're not very close to our parents. The bride chose both of us as maids of honor because she couldn't pick just one. I eventually realized that I was always the backup choice, just there to take on all the responsibilities while the other Mo soaked up all the glory. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. While my brothers were teasing me about giving my Mo speech, my sister was busy with her own speech, gushing about how much she adores the bride and how she'd do anything for her total nonsense. Then, out of nowhere, she calls all the siblings up to toast the bride and groom while I was in tears, trying to escape my brothers. It turned into a whole scene, and I was definitely making it about me. This isn't the first time she's hurt me. She used to fat shame me as a kid, calling me a potato, and said I was a burden to the family because of my epilepsy. She even threw my makeup in the sink just because I moved her towel, and she'd call me the stupid low IQ sister, despite me being a licensed architect with a master's degree. She took away my dream church for the wedding, which is why my fiancé suggested we have a destination wedding in my dream country instead. It's just been the worst, especially in front of the whole family. And nope, we still haven't talked since then. She insists I ruined everything by getting upset about the seating. So, here's the update. We're going to elope. It's just going to be the two of us and a few close friends who have been with us since day one. We're planning a cozy church wedding followed by a beach celebration with our chosen family, and then we'll go island hopping around the Philippines with everyone. We're covering all the costs ourselves. I'm all about creating memories and experiences for the people who truly care about us. Instead of a big wedding in Italy, we're channeling that budget into a more intimate 5-day celebration on a beautiful island in the Philippines. Plus, when we get back home, we'll have a reception with our families. The idea is to host a lunch for both our big families the weekend after we return. We're looking at around 80 guests max. Our parents wanted to chip in for the engagement party and rehearsal dinner, but they've decided to cover this luncheon reception instead, which means they can invite whoever they want. They'll manage the guest list, so if my siblings show up, that's cool with me. I'll be too busy enjoying my new husband by then. We'll still have the father-daughter dance and some fun traditions like cake cutting. We're planning to have pinatas, a brick oven pizza cart, coffee and pretzels, and an incredible Italian buffet with a pasta bar and tons of fresh fruit and cheese because who doesn't love cheese? For the seating arrangement, think of the vibe from Mamma Mia 1. That's the kind of fun we're going for. Picture a long, twisty table where my siblings can sit as far from me as possible, yet still close to the service area without it being too obvious. They'll be at their own siblings' table, while my fiancé, his two brothers, and our parents will be right in the middle with me. My lovely siblings will be at the far end, near the restrooms, which is exactly where they belong. Honestly, I couldn't care less if they're invited to this lunch. I have nothing left for them. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just completely over it, feeling more for a random person on the street than for them. It's pure indifference. They've hurt me so many times that I've become numb to their presence. And no, Brit is illa vibes here. My sister thinks she should be my maid of honor in return. That's definitely not happening since my siblings won't be part of the ceremony. I don't need her around, and I don't want her around. Sure, she'll probably get an invite to the reception out of courtesy, but I'll make sure she's kept at a distance, just like I was. How's that going to work? Well, we just found out she's pregnant, so I'm planning my wedding around her due date. Luckily, she's due in June, which is when we wanted to have the wedding. If she decides to show up with a baby and her husband, she'll be at the kiddie table and asked to step out if the baby starts crying. At the end of the day, our wedding is all about us. Eloping feels like the perfect way to escape all the family drama and just soak in our special day together, away from my siblings. After that, we can have a laid-back lunch with some tasty food and good vibes. Honestly, it's just a lunch to me. Thankfully, my fiancé's family isn't as wild as mine. So, that's the plan. I really appreciate all the messages and support. I was feeling a bit overwhelmed and thought I was overreacting, but your insights helped clear things up. Here's to wrapping up this emotionally exhausting year. 20. Outrageous smile 996, but you're still inviting them to the party, which feels like saying, no matter what, come to my wedding. Honestly, I don't think there's a way to dodge the drama with those siblings. I appreciate your concern, but they won't be at the wedding, just at the lunch afterward, at least 2 weeks later. They can stir up whatever drama they want during lunch, it'll just make them look bad, and I'll find it amusing. By then, I'll have already tied the knot and celebrated with my closest friends weeks earlier. So, I'll just be kicking back with some pizza and wine with my husband, feeling victorious. Angry aunt mentioned they're jealous of the attention she got when she was sick as a kid. Sometimes, parents get so focused on one sick child that they unintentionally overlook the others. If that's the situation, then the siblings have every right to be upset, but they're directing their anger at the wrong person. Op didn't ask for any of this drama. At the end of the day, these are adults who really need to sort themselves out. They should understand that none of this is Op's doing. Personally, my parents were super supportive and did their best to treat us all fairly, so I can't blame them at all. They're truly great parents. I was in a similar boat, I didn't have many friends since I was often out of school, so I spent a lot of time with my mom. She's honestly my best friend. Growing up was fine, but the jealousy really kicked in when we hit our 20s for some reason. Parents can definitely have a closer bond with one child if the others are treating them poorly. Thank you for listening. For more stories, subscribe. I narrate the best stories from across the internet.